All right, start recording. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm really pleased to introduce to you today Catherine Bell, who I'm just have found, and the timing was so amazing. I was just about to record the first module, and then I found Catherine via Instagram. We connected, and so Catherine's a birth cartographer, which you may not know what that is, but when we start talking, you're going to learn. It's about birth mapping, and it's a alternative, or it's a different model of the birth plan, I think, is a good way to explain it. But Catherine's also a consumer advocate, and so she's out there in the world fighting for policy change, essentially, around maternity care, and she's a wealth of information. Her website's amazing, her book is amazing, the Birth Map book, and I'm going to let Catherine talk about her story and how she got into this and tell us a bit more about birth mapping. So I'll hand over to you, Catherine. Thank you for joining us.
No worries. Thank you, Emma. It is absolutely awesome to be here. It all started for me about 8 or 9 years ago, when I was about 3 years into my mothering journey and was getting really frustrated with how difficult it was to find information. So I trained as a doula at that point, and in doing that, discovered all the things I didn't know. And then, of course, that led to even more things that I realised I didn't know. And I started to write down the questions I wish I'd known to ask. I talked to mums in my mum's group, and they all said, oh, I wish I'd known to ask this. And so I wrote those down, and then accidentally wrote the book that you mentioned. And that evolved over about 8 years before it became the Birth Map. Before that, it was just a birth plan template. But I realised also that birth plans were problematic, and a lot of it was around the word plan. I'd try to talk to care providers about my birth plan and walls would go up. Or you'd talk to other mums and they'd say, I tried to have a birth plan, but it got thrown out the window, it was ignored. Why are birth plans not working? Because they're brilliant. They're a way of communicating what you need, what's important to you. They're a way of understanding what's going to happen and finding it all out. There's something else going on here. So the more I looked into it, and being a visual person, I was doodling one day and looked at what I'd doodled and went, oh, that looks like a map. Oh my.
Yeah.
And as soon as I started thinking about it in terms of journeys and maps and pathways, it wasn't about making one fixed idea of an ideal birth plan with contingencies. It was about creating a map that we were going to journey through together, and we would make decisions along the way based on an if this, then that set of protocols that we discussed in advance. So there was no on-the-spot decisions. And one of the things that I discovered with birth plans is that they do tend to focus on that ideal pathway. And the contingencies tend to be quite limited to, if it's not going to be my ideal pathway, then the contingency is some opposite that's quite different to it, rather than that there might be stages along the way where you rethink your pain management, for example, but it only slightly alters the pathways, as opposed to it's either a natural birth or a cesarean birth.
Yeah, or it's, my plan didn't work, oh well, just do whatever you have to do, get the baby out, and
exactly.
Didn't work, it was a good idea, didn't work, but yeah.
Exactly. And so the idea with the birth map is that there's no fail. There's no throwing it out. Whatever pathway you end up on is of your choice, your choosing. So it's kind of like a choose your own adventure, but you've written the whole story. You know every single ending and how they intertwine, so that when you do reach a decision point, you know everything that comes after that decision point. And that's why having a map and visualizing it as a map really helped me to be able to say, okay, at this decision point, it's not just about that particular procedure that I'm considering. It's not just the risks and benefit of that procedure, but everything that comes after it. How is this procedure going to impact my other choices? What are the long-term impacts of this procedure? And the the best example is the epidural. A lot of women who've experienced a traumatic birth will tell you that if they'd been told that the epidural put them at greater risk of an assisted delivery, which put them at that greater risk of that perineal trauma, they may have made a different decision at that point.
Yeah,
And often from their traumatized point, they may say, I would have chosen a cesarean over an augmented labour. But you can't sort of, in hindsight, say I would have made a different decision, because you would have made that decision in a moment pre-trauma.
Yeah.
But if you'd had that information, you would have been better equipped to be able to say, yep, I'm prepared to take that risk or not.
Mm.
And what are my alternatives? And one of the alternatives at that point is a non-emergency cesarean. So if you have a look at my birth map explanation that's on my website, there's actually 4 different types of cesarean.
Yeah, I read
and
about
one of
that
those,
over the weekend. It was so, I've never heard that before, and it just makes so much sense, and you have such a better understanding of what your choices are and what the outcomes might be, and it's so much more of an informed choice. Now, we were talking about that before as well, weren't we, about how important informed choices are.
Exactly. And it's a lot less stressful. And what I've found is, as I've implemented the birth map with my own clients and with myself, because as a good scientist, I tested it out on myself before I released it to the world.
Yep.
And kind of, phew, I'm not putting anyone at terrible risk with this. But the first thing I noticed in testing it is when I used the word map instead of opened up. Suddenly the care provider was all, what are we talking about here? What's going on? Tell me more about this map. Oh, this is brilliant. You know, we're being flexible, and flexible in a way where I'm still empowered, not flexible where I've become compliant, which is what tends to happen in a birth map, where flexibility tends to mean once you've gone off your ideal, you're basically doing what you're told.
Yeah.
So the conversation became really, really rich and wonderful.
Yeah. It's so exciting. I love the model. It just makes so much sense.
What I noticed was the partners that hang out of it. It's so what I've actually decided to do now, because I've seen so much awesome anecdotal evidence from it, is I've actually started a PhD, and I'm going to put it through the academic rigmarole and make sure that I can hopefully get it embedded. The big goal is to get a new way of communicating embedded into the maternity system, so that those women don't come into the system going, oh, I'm on that conveyor belt and I just have to go with the flow of the system. They can now have a lot of input, and midwives can achieve that truly woman-centered care that they are trained to do. So as a birth advocate, really pushing for woman-centered care and full scope midwifery, because that's where the best outcomes lie.
Absolutely. And we've got all the research to tell us that. We know that that's the best outcome. So now how do we implement that and make sure that's happening on the front line? Like we've done the research and counting the numbers and what we know is the best support. And I talk a lot about in the program about how empowered decision making and informed decision making reduce that the disempowered and then the outcome of birth trauma. And so we know how common birth trauma is in our current system, 1 in 3, and that one of the best supporters or the best ways to prevent that is having that trust in your in your provider, be there midwife, doula or obstetrician. But I mean, we know the best results come with that midwives, but to be able to empower that relationship and build the trust and have that flexibility, but still allow those empowered choices all along the way, just makes so much sense to me to improve those outcomes and build that relationship. And so it's so awesome. What was I going to ask you? I think I just wanted to know more. Well, I obviously want to tell mums more about how to find the information. So your website is amazing. It's got amazing blogs, and it's got for myself to educate myself before I interviewed Catherine, I bought her book, which I think was $4.99 or something in an ebook version, and then what's the actual hard copy cost?
30, just over $30, I think.
Yeah, a worthy investment. You know, like the book is amazing. It's got all of the stuff you need in there, all of the questions you need to know, the information, how to know what questions to ask. And can you just tell me, we talked about this before I started recording, about how some mums will go and they'll read it and they'll go all the questions, and some mums will go, no, I trust my midwife, or, you know, we've already talked about enough for me. Yeah, can you explain that? Oh, we're frozen.
Yeah.
Here she comes.
So the idea with the book is that, okay, am I back now?
Yeah, you're back. Yeah, you're back. Love technology. It's so amazing.
Yeah, the idea of the book was that it places the power with the woman. She gets to determine which questions she wants to ask and how she is going to interpret the answers in her context. So the informed decision is not just about the information. It's about her circumstances, how she feels about that information, and what's actually important to her. So the idea of the book is it gives her the power of knowledge. And that's not knowledge of answers, but the questions she needs to ask to get the answers that she feels are missing for her.
Yeah.
So the without the book, without the questions, we are basically running blind, because we're not sure how to answer that. Do you have any questions? Because we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah,
so
we talked about that, especially first time mums, you know, they come through the system and even get to the end in third trimester, and, you know, like they're in their last, you know, checkups and stuff, and if you've got any questions, and them like, oh, I don't really know. I don't know. I should have questions like you were saying, but I don't really know what the questions are. So yeah, it's such an awesome resource. I will be absolutely sorry.
In the absence of continuity of care, it's also useful to ask those questions several times with the different people you meet, because you get lots of really good clues as to what's really happening in that birth location as well. Yeah. So you can really get a big picture of what's going on. So it's questions. It's all that's where the key is.
Yeah, asking the right questions. Okay, thank you so much for making the time to speak with us today, and we will, all of Catherine's contacts and website, the book link and all of that, Catherine's new to Instagram, but she's posting some awesome stuff on there, so you can certainly follow her on there as well and get in touch with her if you've got any questions to learn anything more. So thank you so much, Catherine, and I'm sure I will talk to you again when I start my podcast. Also, I'm doing a podcast, so I'm going to get you on there as well. So thank you.
No worries. Thank you.
Oops.